Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the reading of the fic entitled The Roundabout Way of Fate. Here's the summary. His quirk will get attention no matter where he goes, but if he ends up working with heroes, then he'll have their protection. That's why I said most doctors and nurses have minor healing quirks, because people with powerful ones often catch the attention of heroes, who will in turn protect them from any villains who also have their eye on them.
Oh, okay, this is a lot, and I was worried he'd breathe fire.
Don't ever forget, Izuku's quirk is a good thing. He just needs to be a bit more careful than most children. Midoriya Izuku wants to become a hero. Midoriya Izuku is born with a healing quirk. He learns how to save people a different way. This fic is 44 chapters with 350,000 words. Here's Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Quirk. The late afternoon glow of the sweltering sun beats down on the city in the waning months of summer, painting the sky with hues of reds and oranges as it dips down towards the horizon. Weaving through the streets below, a young Izuku Midoriya sits in the back seat of his mother's car, watching the city pass by in a blur. His mother is speaking, talking to Auntie Mitsuki on the phone, but her voice is muffled, a mere background noise idly brushing his ears. Mothers always talk a lot, and he has far more important things to be paying attention to, like deciding whether that cloud looks more like All Might or Endeavor. The biased fanboy side of Izuku wants to say All Might, but the way the light of the sun is hitting the cloud is turning it orange, making it look like Endeavor's hellflame. Izuku's still gazing at the strangely shaped cloud in contemplation when a delightful laugh slices through his thoughts, drawing his attention to the background noise that is no longer muffled. He glances away from the window at Inko. Mothers always talk a lot, but he never minds when Inko talks to Auntie Mitsuki, because Auntie Mitsuki always makes her laugh more than anyone. A part of him thinks that Auntie Mitsuki probably does it because she likes to hear Inko's laugh as much as he does. Sweet and soft, and somehow has a way of making you feel just a little bit happier to be alive, even if you're already having the best day. Izuku's glad that she has a best friend so eager to bring out that beautiful laugh, and it's even better that said friend is the mother of his own best friend. They're talking about him now, gossiping, as mothers do, about their children right in front of them, as if Izuku can't hear.
I was just getting a little worried,
Inko is saying.
Well, you do know. You know how anxious I get.
She cuts off, and Auntie Mitsuki must have made a comment because she lets out a little snort before continuing.
Anyway, so I took him to the doctor today just to be sure he, would be manifesting a quirk, and Dr. Tsubasa reassured me that everything was fine. He took some x-rays of his feet and found that he didn't have an extra joint on his little toe. Apparently, that's some indicator of quirklessness. I know, right? I didn't even realize people could have a joint there.
She laughs, airy and cheerful, and it instantly brings a smile to Izuku's face. He looks down at his feet and wiggles his toes inside his shoes before going back to staring out the window. Still, he idly listens to his mother as she continues to talk to Auntie Mitsuki.
So he basically told me that Izuku is just a late bloomer. It's not often kids turn 5 without manifesting their quirks, so he says that Izuku will get his any day now.
Izuku can hear a muffled voice from the phone, but despite how loud his best friend's mother is, he can't make out what she's saying. However, a moment later, Inko answers his silent wonderings when she calls back to her son in a light voice.
Hey, Izuku, Mitsuki-san wants to know what quirk you're hoping you'll get.
Izuku blinks. Of course, that's something he's thought about a lot. His eyes are drawn back to the cloud, which he has to admit is an Endeavor cloud. Perhaps the winds high above have shifted, but parts of the cloud are now streaking slightly, making it look even more flame-like in the light of the sun. The Endeavor cloud stands strong and proud against the crimson sky, but Izuku feels nothing but apprehension curling in his stomach. A couple of years ago, he might have wanted to be a fire breather like his father. It would no doubt be a cool quirk to have, and maybe he could even become a hero with it. He used to watch a bunch of videos about flame heroes like Endeavor since he was so convinced he'd inherit his father's quirk. Now, however, Izuku's not as inclined towards it as before. For as long as he can remember, it's always been him and his mother. His father just hasn't been in the picture, so Izuku thinks it would be
Odd to get his quirk. It would be like getting a stranger's quirk. Inko always seems a bit sad whenever he asks about him, and making his mother sad is the last thing he wants to do, so perhaps it would be better for him to inherit her quirk. It might not be very strong, but that's because Inko never wanted to become a hero. Izuku's sure that if he got her quirk, and he trained it hard, it would become strong enough to help him become a great hero, like All Might. Turning his gaze away from the fiery cloud, Izuku grins brightly at his mother and chirps, "I want to get Mama's quirk." Inko smiles in response, and it makes Izuku's heart flutter happily. "Did you hear that?" she asks Auntie Mitsuki, and then laughs at her response. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. You know Katsuki-kun adores you too. He just doesn't want to look like such a mama's boy." Izuku giggles, already having a pretty good idea of what Auntie Mitsuki said about her son, and turns back to the window. He looks away from the clouds and turns his attention to the sky, dyed with crimson. Despite the ominous color, he doesn't feel any sort of unease. Instead, he finds himself reminded of a certain red-eyed boy. "Can I go hang out with Kachan when we get home?" he asks abruptly. "Let me ask Mitsuki-san, dear," Inko replies before doing just so. She must get an enthusiastic response because she lets out another giggle that tickles Izuku's ears like jingling bells before saying, "All right, just give us a few minutes to change and we'll be there soon." The two women bid goodbye, and a minute later the Midoriyas are pulling into their driveway. Izuku immediately jumps out and starts towards Kachan's house, but Inko is quick to snatch him and shoo him into their own house to get changed. Once the two are ready, Izuku takes his mother's hand and eagerly begins leading the way down the street toward the Bakugo's residence. Their neighborhood is small and only has a handful of kids, including Tsubasa and Inaba, who both live a bit further from Izuku than Kachan does. But Izuku doesn't mind the small size, and the lack of a large friend group has never bothered him. Why would he ever need anyone other than Kachan? Speaking of, the sky is darkened now, but Izuku finds the same shade from earlier in the pair of eyes that pop out from behind the window as they approach the Bakugo's house. "Oi, Zuku!" Kachan's shout is muffled. "Hurry up, slowpoke!" "Katsuki, you little— Get down from there! Go away, old hag!" Kachan disappears from the window, and shouting erupts from within the house. Izuku giggles, and Inko lets out a fond sigh as they approach the door, no doubt steeling herself for a very loud night. She knocks, and the door swings open, revealing Kachan and a very irritated-looking Auntie Mitsuki behind him. Her expression smooths out the second she sees Inko, and she spreads her arms welcomingly. "Inko-san, come in, come in. Hey there, little Izuku." Izuku blushes as she ruffles his hair, and Kachan groans in annoyance. The blonde brushes past his mother and grabs him by the arm before beginning to drag him towards his room. Auntie Mitsuki scowls at her son as they pass. "Oi, dinner's going to be ready in 20 minutes, you hear?" she snaps. "Don't start making a mess." "We won't," Izuku reassures her as he gets pulled along, but Auntie Mitsuki just smiles sweetly at him. "Oh, Izuku, you know I don't mean you." She sends a pointed glare at Kachan, who just rolls his eyes. Yeah, fine. Come on, Zuku." He takes the smaller boy to his room and shuts the door loudly. Turning to him, the blonde demands, "Well, Tsubasa-kun said Auntie was taking you to see his grandpa about your quirk. What'd he say?" Izuku ponders. The doctor's visit this afternoon was a bit boring. Dr. Tsubasa said a lot of stuff and spoke more to his mother than to him, but Izuku dutifully recounts the gist of what he understood of the events that transpired. And when he's finished, Kachan huffs and folds his arms. "Well, what's taking so long?" he asks impatiently. Izuku gives a small, clueless shrug. "I don't know, but he said it's going to come any day now. I'm excited." He clenches his fists and beams at his friend. "I can't wait to be a hero like All Might." Kachan scowls. "Nuh-uh, I'm going to be like All Might." He opens his palms and lets out a couple of explosions, as if to prove his point. "I'm going to be the best hero ever, better than All Might even." Izuku's eyes widen. "Better than All Might?" he asks in awe. "No way!" "Yes way, just you wait." Kachan brushes past Izuku to a basket of toys leaning against his wall. "Once I get bigger, I'm going to beat up all the villains in the world. No one'll beat me. You'll see." Izuku gazes after his friend fondly. Kachan is loud and abrasive, just like his quirk. But he's also the most determined person Izuku knows. Nothing ever seems to scare him or make his confidence waver. He's just amazing. Even before his quirk manifested, he was always amazing. His quirk just made him cooler. Not cooler than All Might, though. Kacchan, his back still turned to Izuku, proceeds to turn the basket over and dump all of his toys on the ground. Izuku frowns. Kacchan, your mom said not to make a mess, he says uneasily. Kacchan scoffs. Who cares what that old hag says? Come on, I want to play heroes. He takes out an All Might action figure and pushes an Endeavor figure towards Izuku. Here, you can be my sidekick. A bit disgruntled, but used to it by now. The few times he's insisted on being the main hero, Kacchan had been irritated the entire time. Izuku takes the toy and settles down next to him. Kacchan quickly starts setting up a narrative, using dramatic voices and his quirk for effects. As they play, their mother's muffled chatting coming from the kitchen. Izuku thinks back to their earlier discussion. I wonder what quirk I'll get, he ponders aloud. Kacchan stops swooping the All Might action figure through the air and gives him a look. I hope I get Mama's quirk, or maybe a mix of hers and Dad's, although I don't know if that can happen. Kacchan stares at him for a few moments, then turns away with a dismissive snort. Well, no matter what quirk you end up with, you'll never be able to beat me. As soon as he says that, Auntie Mitsuki's voice calls from the kitchen, telling them that dinner is ready. Kacchan quickly scrambles to his feet and runs out of the room. Izuku doesn't follow for a few moments, instead, sitting back and listening as the mother and son start snapping at each other. Kacchan's words leave an odd feeling in his chest. He wouldn't say they hurt, because he knows better than to put so much personal offense behind the boy's words. Kacchan is always rude and often speaks without thinking. That's just the way he is, and he should be used to it by now. But still. Oi, nerd! Get over here! We're eating sukiyaki! Ignoring the odd ache in his heart, Izuku gets to his feet and dashes over to the kitchen. Coming! Now that they know with certainty that Izuku will be getting a quirk, all that's left to do is wait. And so they do. Every morning Izuku wakes up, expecting to feel different, expecting for this to be the day that his quirk will manifest. Every morning, he attempts to telekinetically pull objects towards him, or breathe fire. And every morning, nothing seems to change. Nothing seems different. At first, he doesn't worry about it too much. 1 week since seeing Dr. Tsubasa goes by, and life goes on as normal. But then 1 week turns into 2, then into 3, then into a month. By the end of October, just over 2 months since he turned 5, Izuku still has yet to manifest his quirk, and he's beginning to get impatient. Kacchan is too. Not only that, but he seems to also be getting disappointed, bored with Izuku. The greenette can see it in his eyes after each time he asks if his quirk manifested that day, after each time he replies negatively. He can see the disinterest, the way he turns and chooses to spend more and more time with Tsubasa and Inaba, both of whom have already manifested their quirks. It leaves an unsettling feeling in his gut. He doesn't understand. Why won't his quirk come? It will come, won't it? The doctor said it would, but people whisper things around him now. His teachers give him concerned, pitying glances when they think he's not looking. His classmates are confused and mutter to each other behind his back. Then one day, Inaba says it. Maybe he just doesn't have a quirk. Izuku freezes. He, Kacchan, Tsubasa, and Izuku are exploring a nearby forest after school, one they've been to a few times before. The 3 boys still let Izuku tag along on their adventures, but lately, he can tell it's with some reluctance, so he hangs back. Still, despite being a few feet behind the trio, he hears Inaba's suggestion loud and clear. That's stupid. How could he not have a quirk? Kacchan snaps, and part of Izuku's relieved that his best friend is defending him, despite having disappointed him. But then, Tsubasa pipes up. My dad says it's called being quirkless. And that word, the one people have been whispering around him, acting like he can't hear. Quirkless, as in, without a quirk. Him. No, it's impossible. Sure, he's a little later than normal, but the doctor... Some people just are born without them. Tsubasa continues, oblivious to Izuku's inner turmoil. My great-aunt doesn't have one. I'm gonna have a quirk, Izuku insists, interrupting him. The three glance over their shoulders at him, and he falters. I don't have an extra toe joint, he explains hesitantly. Dr. Tsubasa-san said that all quirkless people have an extra toe joint, but I don't, so I'm not a late bloomer. The trio share dubious glances before Kachan tosses his head and scoffs. Well then hurry up already, Zuku, we've been waiting forever. Izuku smiles nervously and trots after them as they continue their exploration of the forest. He'll get his quirk. Doctors are smart people. Inko says to listen to them. He just needs to be patient. Soon enough, his presence fades into the background once again as Kachan decides to start showing off his quirk now that there are no adults around. Tsubasa and Inaba encourage him to make bigger explosions, whooping with excitement each time they grow in size. Kachan preens under all the attention, gloating over the power of his quirk as he braces himself for another explosion. Get ready, guys! This one's going to be the biggest! He hollers, holding his palms out. Izuku smartly decides to take a step back and watches as his friend tenses up before unleashing an impressive explosion. His awe is short-lived, interrupted by a pained yelp from Kachan. Kachan! He cries out, rushing to the blonde, who's clutching his wrists with gritted teeth. Tsubasa and Inaba are closer to him, but somehow Izuku reaches his side first. What happened? He takes Kachan's wrists in his hands and frowns at the sight of slightly burned skin on his wrists and palms. Kachan pushes his discomfort away and glances at Tsubasa and Inaba. Quit worrying, it's nothing, guys. He scoffs dismissively. Just happens sometimes when I overuse my quirk. As he talks, Izuku keeps staring down at the boy's injuries. The skin feels hot beneath his fingers, but there's something else to it too. Something strange. Like there's an odd substance, or perhaps a presence. He isn't quite sure how to name it, but he can feel it lingering right underneath Kachan's skin. Without his awareness, he finds his eyes fluttering shut. As he focuses on that strange heat, he is surprised to discover something similar swirling within him. He doesn't even notice it until he feels it flowing out of him, through his hands and into Kachan's skin. It all happens so quickly and ends abruptly when Kachan notices Izuku still holding on to him and yanks his wrists out of his hands. Oi, what are you doing, idiot? I said I'm... The blonde stops mid-sentence, glaring down at his hands in surprise. His eyes widen. It feels better, he murmurs in shock. His head snaps up to Izuku, glaring. What did you do? Izuku is confused until he notices that the burns on Kachan's hands are completely gone, the skin unmarred. Huh? What happened? Inaba asks, stepping closer to observe Kachan's wrists. Hey, your burns are gone! Yeah, no shit, but how? Kachan snaps, still glaring at Izuku. The other two boys turn to look at him. Did you do this, Midoriya-kun? Tsubasa asks, tilting his head curiously. Izuku anxiously shifts his feet under the attention and wrings his hands. I don't know, he squeaks. I don't know, it felt weird. I don't know what happened. Inaba blinks at him, and his eyes widen. Hey, maybe this is your quirk. Try it again. Izuku turns to Kachan, who's still glaring, and holds out his hands. Kachan huffs and begrudgingly lets Izuku hold his wrists. Izuku tries to find that strange warm sensation again, but it seems to have vanished alongside Kachan's burns. He frowns. I don't think I can do it now, he says. The feeling is gone. I don't know how to get it back. Well, what did it feel like? Inaba asks, surprisingly patient. Describe what happened. Izuku presses his lips together and tries to find the right words. It was like warm? Kachan's burns, but not his skin. It was like something underneath his skin. It wasn't like regular warm either. I don't know how to describe it, but I could just feel it. And then I felt the same thing in me, except it was leaving. It was like flowing out of me into Kachan, and then his burns were gone. He trails off uncertainly. The feeling was so strange and alien that it kind of scares him, especially not knowing what it is. They all turn when Tsubasa suddenly spreads his wings. Hold on, I've got an idea, he says before disappearing up into the trees. There's a moment of silence, then the sound of leaves rustling and branches snapping. A bird shrieks, making Izuku flinch, before Tsubasa reappears. "Here," he says, landing in front of them. He pushes a small bird into Izuku's hands and says, "I broke its wing. See if that weird feeling comes back." "What?" Izuku exclaims. "Tsubasa-kun, that's so mean. Poor bird." Tsubasa rolls his eyes, but Izuku doesn't notice, too busy focusing on the bird in his palms that is frozen in fear. As soon as his fingers brush over the bird's wing, he feels the strange warmth again. This time, though, he can feel it swirling around the bird's wing joint. The word dislocated comes to mind. He sees it happening to Heroes' arms sometimes in movies. Closing his eyes, he tries to summon the warmth within him that he felt earlier, only to discover that it's already flowing out of him. Now that it's not as shocking anymore, he takes the time to really focus on the feeling and try to decipher what it is. "Ow!" he yelps, dropping the bird. It unfurls its wings and takes flight, fleeing back up into the trees. He frowns down at his finger where the bird pecked him, but there's no blood. "Hey, it worked!" Inaba exclaims. "You healed it! You have a healing quirk!" "Cool," Tsubasa grins. "What?" Kacchan barks, scowling. "That's not possible. His parents don't have healing quirks." Inaba shrugs cluelessly. "I don't know, man. Maybe it skipped a generation or two." "That's really cool, though, Midoriya-kun," Tsubasa says. "I've never seen one like that before. How does it work? What does it feel like?" Taken aback by the sudden positive attention, Izuku flounders for a moment. It felt like..." He racks his brain, trying to find the right word to describe the feeling. "It felt like energy. Yeah, like energy or something. It's like I pushed my energy into the injury and it got better. Oh, and I could also kind of tell what the injury was. Like I could feel Kacchan's energy swirling around his burns, and the bird's also around its wing. But with the bird, I could tell that its wing wasn't broken, but dislocated. 'Cause, it was like the energy was focused around the joint, like it was trying to fix it." It sounds confusing even to him, and one look at his friends' faces tells him they think so too. But his confusion is being pushed aside by his excitement. This is his quirk. He finally got his quirk. "Oh my gosh, I have a quirk now!" he exclaims, jumping up and down. "I have a quirk! I have a quirk!" Inaba laughs. "Well, come on, let's see if you can heal more stuff." With a mischievous grin, he reels his fist back and punches Tsubasa's shoulder. "Ow, jerk!" Tsubasa growls. Before he can pounce on Inaba, however, Izuku latches onto his arm and wow! He doesn't even have to try to use his quirk. It just activates automatically as soon as he feels an injury. "Whoa," Tsubasa breathes, flexing his arm. "The pain went away so fast. Thanks, Midoriya-kun." The praise has Izuku's heart fluttering, and he can't help the grin that breaks out on his face. "Hey, I want to try," Inaba whines. "Punch me! Punch me!" "Hey," Kacchan says, but he gets ignored. Tsubasa snickers, and is more than happy to sock Inaba in the arm. The boy hisses, but soon smiles when Izuku eagerly uses his quirk on him. "Man, you're so lucky," Inaba says. "That's going to be such a useful quirk." "Hey," Kacchan repeats. "Let's go see what else you can heal," Tsubasa says. "Hey, idiots!" Kacchan finally snaps. "We're not doing that." Tsubasa and Inaba turn to him and whine, but he merely snarls back at them. "I'm taking Zuku back to Auntie. This is weird shit, and we gotta figure out what's going on before he gets hurt." "Huh? Hurt? How would he get hurt?" Inaba tilts his head. Kacchan gives him a "are you stupid" look. "All quirks have drawbacks, especially when they're overused," he says, flexing his wrists. Inaba opens his mouth to argue, then closes it and frowns thoughtfully. Izuku's a bit disappointed. He just got his quirk, and now Kacchan wants him to stop using it. But then notices something. He's a bit tired, not terribly so, but more than he usually is at this time of the day. Perhaps this whole energy transfer thing drains his own energy. I guess I am feeling a bit tired," he admits. Kacchan arches his brow at Inaba as if to say, "See?" And the other boy just rolls his eyes. "Ah, fine, we'll play with it more tomorrow," Inaba says. "Yeah, you gotta show the class," Tsubasa says. Izuku smiles. "I can't wait." Kachan decides that it's time to go and grabs him by the arm, dragging him back towards the street. "Thanks for helping me figure out my quirk, guys," he calls back. "Yeah, no problem. Congrats." Still beaming, Izuku turns back around and lets himself be dragged by Kachan. He still can't believe this is happening. He's never been so confused and happy in his life. "Isn't this great, Kachan?" he says. "I finally have a quirk." Kachan doesn't look at him as he replies, "Yeah, great." His tone is low and he doesn't sound too happy. Izuku's enthusiasm wanes. "What's wrong?" he asks, confused. "Nothing," Kachan retorts. "Let's just get you to Auntie. She'll figure out what's going on." Izuku pouts. Thankfully, the walk back home is short, so soon he's swinging the front door open and crying out, "Mama! Mama, I got my quirk!" "What?" Inko exclaims, rushing over from the kitchen. "Oh, sweetie, that's wonderful." She scoops Izuku up and presses numerous kisses onto his cheeks. He whines and tries to squirm away. Kachan fidgets impatiently by the door. "Oh, my baby, I'm so happy for you." Finally managing to push her face away, Izuku says, "And you'll never guess what it is." "Oh?" Inko asks, feigning confusion. "What is it?" "Healing," Kachan interrupts. She turns to the blonde in surprise, and he stares back up at her sullenly. "It's some sort of healing quirk." "Huh?" Now Inko's confusion is real. Izuku nudges her repeatedly and whines, "Mama, you never told me we had healing quirks in our family." Inko still glancing between the two boys, her mind clearly whirling. "We don't," she says softly, her brow furrowing. "Honey, are you sure?" "Yeah," Izuku says enthusiastically. Inko blinks and glances at Kachan, who's gazing at her with an unusually serious expression. "Katsuki-kun?" she questions with an uncertain tone. Sensing her hesitance, Kachan huffs and stomps to the kitchen. He pulls out a small knife from the drawer, alarming Inko, but before she can stop him, he purposefully slices the edge of his palm. "Katsuki-kun, what on earth are you doing?" "Zuku," Kachan says, holding his palm up to the smaller boy, who is squirming out of his mother's grasp. "Show her." Izuku takes Kachan's hand in his, and his quirk immediately flows. "Now hold on, you can't just—" "Oh!" Inko's eyes widen comically as the cut vanishes within seconds. For a few moments, she just stares, even when Izuku beams up at her proudly. "See?" She blinks slowly, a soft "oh" escaping her lips. Okay," she speaks haltingly as if she's trying to wrap her brain around the situation. Okay, let's... She straightens up and looks down at Izuku, plastering on a nervous smile. "Why don't we visit Dr. Tsubasa-san again, honey, okay?" "Okay," Izuku agrees cheerfully, bouncing from foot to foot. Kachan is still frowning. "Katsuki-kun, why don't you head home, and maybe have your mother check out your hand?" "But his hand's fine, see?" Izuku says. "I healed it." "I know, honey, but just in case," Inko says, quickly grabbing her purse and keys and herding the kids to the door. "Come on, then." Izuku bids Kachan goodbye, and Inko watches the boy until he has disappeared down the street before she puts her son into the car and drives off. All right, listeners, this concludes the first half to Chapter 1 of The Roundabout Way of Fate. The second half of this chapter will be up next. Personally, I think this fic is a great representation of any healer Izuku fics, and I'd love to hear what you all think as well. So drop those thoughts, reactions below in the comments, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.